and the rubble and after. Look what we did. People lived there before, and now they can't get it right. And obviously, in general, you should probably never meme a war crime. But if you absolutely have to, expect something less boring than the before-after template. Maybe use the the disaster girl. There's a building up already there, and it's a little girl with eyes that scream, I don't know what the Geneva Conventions are, and frankly, I don't care. The more I think about it, the fact is, the citizens of Gaza don't have an iron dome to protect them the way that the citizens of Israel do. It's one of the many ways they're at a significant disadvantage. Although an Israeli military spokesperson tried to push back on the idea that there's really much of a discrepancy there.
Somebody on Twitter said that the Palestinians don't have an iron dome. Yes, they have an iron dome. It's called "Don't fire rockets at Israeli civilians," and we won't fire anything at Gaza.
Yeah, but there are a couple of differences. Iron Dome, for one, sounds much cooler, and also it has the significant advantage of being an actual defense system that exists, unlike Gaza's, which is mostly try not to be where the bombs are landing. And it's important to note here, the vast majority of the Palestinians in Gaza are not part of Hamas. They don't get together and all decide to launch rockets. It's not a fucking co-op board. But when Israel fires rockets at Gaza, it endangers all Palestinians there. Maybe somebody on Twitter could point that out to that guy. To people in Gaza, it can seem like the only time anyone pays attention to what's happening there is when Hamas is firing rockets, which is understandably very frustrating. Because they've been living under a suffocating blockade for 15 years. And in Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories, Palestinians are essentially being governed by a form of apartheid. And it's an echo of both international and Israeli human rights. Even when they are not being bombed. And the US government has implicitly co-signed on the brutally hard line Israel's been taking. This guy basically gave Israel a green light to do anything it wanted for the last 4 years, and what has had the opportunity to reset that relationship. His administration's response this week has been deeply underwhelming, giving a generic statement that Israel has a right to defend itself. It's the exact same line that Obama said and that Bush said before him. Israel has a right to defend itself is just something all presidents end up saying out loud at some point in office, like my fellow Americans, or what do you mean there are no aliens? This is some bullshit. And look, it's not that Israel doesn't have the right to defend itself. It's just that line cannot be used to excuse absolutely everything. Multiple children have been killed this week, 8 in a single strike just yesterday, and the US is heavily implicated here. Not just by serving as Israel's diplomatic shield at the UN, but by constantly refusing to criticize the indefensible. What just this week, a State Department spokesman desperately when asked
I want to ask you, I don't want to harp on this either, but the Israelis killed 13 people just now, including maybe 5 or 6 children. Do you condemn that? Do you condemn the killing of children?
Saeed,
I'm asking, do you condemn the killing of Palestinian children?
Obviously, and these reports are just emerging, and I understand, I was just speaking to the team, I understand we don't have independent confirmation of facts on the ground yet, so I'm very hesitant to get into reports that are just emerging. Obviously, the deaths of civilians, be they Israeli or Palestinians, are something we would take very seriously.
Holy shit, he just asked you, is child murder bad? This really isn't hard. Just say yes. The only scenario in which the answer to is killing children wrong gets tricky is if you're a time traveller in 1890s Austria trying to explain why you just killed the Hitler family bounty new baby boy. I know how this looks, but trust me, it is complicated. Look, there is a real tendency, particularly in America, to both sides this situation, and I'm not saying that there aren't some areas where that's warranted, but it's important to recognise there are also areas where it's simply not. Both sides are firing rockets, but one side has one of the most advanced militaries in the world. Both sides are suffering heartbreaking casualties, but one side is suffering them exponentially. And it's not like the US is operating from the moral high ground here. It's obviously no stranger to drone striking weddings and saying, we were just trying to target enemy combatants. This country has blood on its hands too. Look, if you believe Israel's actions are warranted and proportionate this week, you're welcome to try and break that argument. We have got to start having this conversation honestly and sanitize like real estate disputes and airstrikes on militants feels a little disingenuous, but what you're describing is forcing people from the homes they lived in for decades to become civilians and children. And again, none of this really Hamas on responsibility, but Hamas doesn't represent all Palestinians, just as what Israel is doing right now doesn't represent all Israelis or indeed Jewish people. This is complicated, but some things, one side is suffering much more. And if America really wants to help, they want to seriously consider changing its long-held position here, because for decades, the backbone of America's policy in the Middle East has been that America is an unwavering friend to Israel, which is a great thing to try and be. But at the end of the day, I would hope that a real friend would tell me what I think, and definitely when I'm committing and now this.
And now, Henry Melbourne.
Diyorsun ilerlersin bulunsun üniversiteden atarak para
Will Smith would say. To paraphrase ASAP Ferg, chasing, all this knowledge chasing. To paraphrase Lauryn Hill, Pruitt may think he's more powerful than two Cleopatras, but he's still ready to flip it in the swamp on a dirty mattress. There is a lyric for that, Margaret.
Yes.
Which is Jay-Z said, Mom always told me, don't argue with fools, because people from a distance can't see who is who. I hate the new Kanye, the bad mood Kanye, the always rude Kanye, spaz in the news Kanye. I miss the old Kanye. Jay Electronica, when I look in the mirror, all I see is flaws. And wasn't it Pusha T who said, I believe there's a God above me. I'm just the God of everything else. Mm-hmm. That's pretty powerful. Wasn't it Drake who said the game is sold separate? Another way to put it is started from the Biden, now we're here.
You could put it that way, Ari. Yeah, you could.
Moving on. Our main story tonight concerns guns. You know, big pew-pew sticks that go boom-boom. Guns are everywhere in America, and I do mean everywhere.
How many guns do you think I can hide underneath a Hawaiian shirt? Of course, we got the gray man. Got my Beretta Model 85. Feels like a car armed CT-45. Charter Arms. Undercover. 38 Special. Grandpa Dave's old Derringer. This is the Sky. CPX-2. Smith & Wesson 442. Oh, wait. One more. North American Arms. Sidewinder. 22 Magnum. Just in case you need something small.
Wow. That is the second most horrifying thing you can find coming at you in a Hawaiian shirt, right after John Lasseter on National Hug Your Boss Day. Although I will say, the reveal of the Thumbelina-sized gun in his Tommy Bahama pockets was an M. Night Shyamalan-worthy twist. Well done, tiny gun. You are both superfluous and surprising. But this story isn't so much about guns themselves, as it is about one particular law that significantly expanded how they're used. I'm talking about stand your ground laws. 30 states currently have them, and while they were initially pitched as a law and order measure to protect people forced to make difficult decisions in impossible life or death situations, in practice, they can be invoked in incidents that really seem like they didn't need to turn deadly.
The man who shot and killed a father of 4 at a Florissant bar is free tonight. So far, the gunman's not facing charges for the shooting at Show Me's Bar and Grill on Wednesday afternoon. The St. Louis County prosecutor says he needs more time to decide whether he'll prosecute the gunman. That's because Missouri's Stand Your Ground law is complicated. Scott Berry was killed when an argument over how heavy a dog could weigh became physical.
Holy shit! Not only is that a massive overreaction, it's a pointless argument. Everyone knows dogs come in a wide array of sizes, from pocket-sized sweeties to slender kings, to dense boys, to droopy boys, to big honking boys, to standard. That's just veterinary science. Standing ground laws gained notoriety nearly a decade ago when police claimed that Florida's law kept them from initially arresting George Zimmerman after he shot and killed 17-year-old Trayvon Martin. More recently, they've been floated as a potential defense for the killers of Ahmaud Arbery. And those are just 2 devastating examples of many. Don't worry, we're not going to show you the far too plentiful footage of people getting shot in public places tonight. Frankly, we're just one senseless murder away from HBO Max putting the show in the endless parade of human misery category alongside Chernobyl and Entourage. But given the prevalence of stand your ground laws and the racial disparities in who they do and crucially don't protect, we thought tonight it'd be worth taking a look at them. And let's start with why exactly stand your ground laws were created. Because before they came along, most states already had self-defense laws on the books that traditionally included an element known as a duty to retreat, meaning you couldn't resort to using deadly force in a confrontation if you could safely avoid or de-escalate it. Now, in many states, an exception to this rule was a so-called castle doctrine, a legal theory arguing that your home is your castle, and there you can use deadly force much more broadly to protect yourself against intruders. The key thing stand your ground laws did was remove that duty to retreat from public places, basically extending the castle doctrine to anywhere you have a legal right to be. If you have a reasonable fear someone might hurt you, you have just as much right to shoot them in the street as you would if they were coming through the window of your house. And this change was largely thanks to the advocacy of one woman with a pretty compelling story.
Marion Hammer says she was walking to her car after a long day at the office when she was accosted by a car full of men. But she had a surprise for them.
I drew the gun up through the headlights of the car and I aimed at the driver. And somebody in the car screamed, "The bitch got a gun."
The bitch got a gun? I honestly did not expect to hear that come out of that woman's mouth. Help yourself to some hard candies in the ceramic pig? Absolutely. Take off your boots so you don't track anything on the wall-to-wall carpeting? Of course. But a curse word? In the daylight? Not in 10,000 contractions of the universe. But the important part of her story concerns what she claims a police chief said to her after she told her story publicly.
The police chief told me, well, in that situation, if you'd called the police, we'd have arrested you because you were the only one who employed the use of deadly force. And that made me angry.
And that argument is the absolute core of the case for stand your ground laws, that Marion Hammer could have been arrested for simply defending herself. Now, she wasn't, of course, that didn't happen, but someone said that she might have been, and that made her angry. But a few things there, because while everything about Marion Hammer seemed like a sweet, everyday grandmother, right down to this beeline glamour shot of her posted on a cat breeder's website, you should know she's also one of the country's most powerful gun lobbyists and a former president of the NRA. She has personally helped push through dozens of gun laws in Florida alone, including a 1987 bill allowing conceal and carry permits, a law then duplicated in some form in almost every state, leading to more than 16 million Americans currently having licenses to carry concealed handguns. So that Margaritaville arsenal that you saw earlier, you have this Dana Carvey character to thank for that situation. And while it's not entirely relevant, you should know Hammer's advocacy wasn't limited just to guns. She also successfully filled a petition from 10,000 school children to change the Florida state bird to the scrub jay, a bird so friendly it apparently eats peanuts out of your hands. Now, she objected because, in her words, begging for food isn't sweet, it's lazy and it's a welfare mentality, and they eat the eggs of other birds, that's robbery and murder. I don't think scrub jays can even sing. And okay, slow down there, Marion. Set aside lazy, welfare mentality and robbery and murder, which is a lot to put on a bird. Scrub jays can't sing? You might want to tell that to the scrub jay, Marion. See? That's fine. Is it great? No, it's not great. It's fine. It's perfectly fine. Sure, the bird is no Mariah, but it's also no Roseanne. If that bird is anyone, it's Fergie. You heard me. The scrub jay is Fergie. Tweet it, talk it, put it in your pocket. I've made a flimsy take and I'm proud of it. The point is, Marion Hammer played a big part in passing one of the country's first stand your ground laws in Florida. And the passage of that bill was immensely useful to the NRA because it became a model for laws that they could then push around the country. Wayne Lapierre openly said at the time that Florida was the first step of a multi-state strategy, and they were going to use the tailwind to move from state legislature to state legislature. And they did. Just 6 years later, stand your ground laws had passed in 22 states. And while following the killing of Trayvon Martin, they became increasingly controversial, states did not stop passing the laws. They just slightly slowed down. And Dennis Baxter, one of the state representatives who helped draft Florida's bill, was adamant that it should not be rolled back.
We should stand beside law-abiding citizens. They should not be treated as a criminal. They're doing something positive, which is stopping a violent act from occurring. There are going to be times with close calls near the foul line. Is it in or is it out? Who's the assailant and who's the victim?
Yeah, there are going to be some close calls. Is it in or is it out? Is it right or is it wrong? Is it self-defense Or is it a murder provoked by debate about how much a dog can weigh that turned physical? Who can say? Not that guy. And that is a little bit of the point here. The way most state standing ground laws are constructed, it can make determining questions of guilt incredibly difficult because it all comes down to perceived fear, whether you legitimately saw someone as a threat. And that is definitionally subjective. What I am afraid of, snakes, clowns, and Tilda Swinton, Jesus Christ, might not be what you are. And it's made even harder by the fact that often the only other person who knows what happened in the incident is now dead. And citing standing ground as a legal defense has been extremely successful. In Florida alone, as of 2012, nearly 70% of people who claimed it as a defense had gone free. And advocates for these laws will tell you that that's a good thing, that before their introduction, good people were getting sent to jail all of the time simply for defending themselves. But they never had much in the way of actual evidence for that, beyond hypotheticals like Marion Hammer's story about how someone said she could have gone to jail, but crucially, she didn't. So standing ground laws weren't really fixing a problem that needed solving, and the dangers they posed were pretty obvious to some from the start. When Georgia was debating a standing ground law in 2006, a local station asked people in the streets what they thought, and watch as their third interviewee realizes something that the first two don't.
I think it's a lower crime myself, because a person's going to think twice about running up on a citizen if he thinks that citizen's armed.
If you feel like your life's in danger, I think it's a good law.
I think it's going to get a lot of people hurt.
Why is that?
Well, because when you walked up to me in the parking lot, I didn't know who you were. And by this law, if I felt that you threatened me, I could have just shot you right now. You know, that's not right.
Yeah, that last guy is completely right. And in hindsight, maybe we shouldn't have listened to the man in the Pride of the South hat, that, by the way, features a portrait of Robert E. Lee over a Confederate flag. That hat alone should have immediately disqualified anything he said. It's like if Anthony Fauci wore this bucket hat that says Daddy in the Shrek font. If he did, you'd be duty bound to ignore anything that he said. But the fact is, we now know overall, not only do standing ground laws not deter crime, they may actually increase violence. In standing ground states, homicides overall have increased nearly 11% since the law's enactment, whereas in states without those laws, the homicide rate went down by just over 2%. In fact, another study found such laws translate into an additional 600 homicides per year. And if you're thinking, well, come on, you can't draw a straight line between these specific laws and people's actions. In some cases, you very much can, including one of the very first standing ground cases in Texas, that of Joe Horn, who called 911 to report a burglary happening during the day at his next-door neighbor's house.
I've got a shotgun. Do you want me to stop him? Nope, don't do that. Ain't no property worth shooting somebody over, okay?
Joe Horn sounds clearly upset.
I'm not going to let him get away with it. I can't take a chance of getting killed over this, okay? No, I'm going to shoot. I'm going to shoot.
But the 911 dispatcher warns Horn to stay inside at least a dozen separate times.
Got officers coming out there. I don't want you to go outside that house.
Then Horn, sounding angrier by the moment, cites the new Texas law.
Now, I have a right to protect myself too, sir, and you understand that. And the laws have been changed in this country since September the 1st, and you know it and I know it.
Yeah, Joe Horn knew what the law said, and despite the dispatcher warning him not to go outside 14 times, he did just that and killed 2 people, with autopsy reports later showing that both men appeared to have been shot in the back. He was explicitly told that property is not worth shooting people over, which is obviously true, and certainly not your neighbour's property. If I found out my neighbour shot and killed 2 people to save my PS5, I would move tomorrow. I know they're hard to get your hands on, but Jesus Christ, calm down. I don't want your blood constant.